Kemonomimi, cat girls even, nekos if you're so inclined. Animal-eared girls in general. They become a staple in anime and waifu culture, and today we will take a dive into what their proper anatomy would look like in real life. So let's get to this. Let's get the obvious out of the way and let's talk about those ears. The main area of debate when it comes to Kemonomimi is how the ears function and how many ears there are. What does proper animal ear and human skull anatomy look like? Are we working with 2 animal ears only? Are we working with both human and animal ears? Thankfully, there was someone out there who did the diagram part of this and made my life a little easier, so we're going to refer to this instead. In this picture, we can see how the ear canals will be placed in relation to the ear type. In example A, when there's animal ears only, the version of the wide ears with the ear canals on the sides is the most correct version. This is because in animals with a pair of ears that lie superior or on top of the head, the ear canal and the opening into the skull is lateral or to the sides. Then there's example B1, when there's both human and animal ears with canals. There would most certainly be 4 ear canals running into the head, and I predict that where they would enter would be diagonal to each other. The normal human ears enter where they are, and it would be highly likely that the opening for the animal ears would lie posterior, behind, and superior, above, to the original ear canal. Another thing that having an extra set of ears would allow for is ultra-precise omnidirectional hearing compared to the binaural hearing that we have. Binaural meaning that it relates to both of our ears. That's really about it for ear anatomy. Now let's get into the next major component, the tail. In regards to tails, I think it's important to note that, as humans, we don't have one. I'm sure you noticed, but I feel like I have to say that anyway. However, we are talking about human hybrids that do have tails, so we'll focus on that. What we need to get down is what proper tail anatomy looks like on other vertebrates, specifically mammals. We can look at cat anatomy for now, since cat girls are the most relevant here, to give us a baseline. Looking at the skeleton of a cat, we can see where the spine leads into the tail. It's all technically spine, since it's all part of the cat's vertebrae. The vertebrae that make up the main body, which applies to almost all vertebrates, are grouped into 4 regions: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. There is a 5th one for animals with tails, and that is a caudal region, which comprises the bones of the tail. The number of bones varies from animal to animal and with tail length, so we're going to ignore how many bones would be in a cat girl because I don't feel like talking about that. Instead, I'll talk about what muscles will be present and where the tail would come from. Beginning with tail placement, it would come out right at the tip of the gluteal cleft. That's where the sacrum, aka the tailbone, terminates. So it's where Kemonomimi caudal vertebrae would connect to and come out from. I see quite a few artists who draw the tail coming out from the lower back instead of there, which honestly I don't blame them for. This artist here drew it on the lower back, which would be too high in real life. Unlike this artist, who actually got the placement spot on, so kudos to him. But this video isn't about roasting artists, this is just a hypothetical discussion. Next up, we have to discuss what muscles will be present now that we have a human with a tail. Deducing this is facilitated by our primate cousins, the monkeys, which are not apes by the way. It's important to note that we humans are part of the great apes, and we are still classified as apes, which also includes chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans. We are distinctly different from monkeys, since apes are primates that don't have tails and monkeys are primates that do. So Curious George, you're not a little monkey, you're a little ape. We've all been lied to. Back on track, we can borrow from monkey anatomy to show us what's going to be in our cat girl. The most prominent muscle involved in tail movement is named the caudofemoralis, and femoral referring to the thigh. In vertebrates, this muscle originates in caudal vertebrae 2, 3, and 4 and inserts into the lateral patellar joint.
Whatever the fuck that is!
In Ooga Booga terms, that means that it starts out in the tail and ends in the knee. Quick aside, the origin of a muscle is the point of attachment to a bone where the muscle is most stable. The insertion is where the muscle ends and is more mobile and attaches to a different bone, which ends up being the bone that the muscle moves. A great example would be the calf. It originates at the knee and inserts into the heel, which allows for ankle movement. Here are some very crude diagrams of where we would see the caudofemoralis in a human body. This is just the overall path, by the way, not exact placement, but it gets the idea across. We would see it come from the base of the tail, wrap around and under the gluteus, and then end on the sides at the knee. We also have other, less prominent but equally important muscles. These are all located in the pelvis. Yeah, I'm not naming all of them or what they do, so I'll just label them on screen. And with that ends up the muscle segments. Also, you may be asking why I didn't do this muscle segment for the ears too. I didn't care enough, that's why. Anyway, now I move on to the hands. Yeah, you're fucking weird if you wanted to have paws instead of hands. Now obviously there are going to be many issues with making IRL animal-girl hybrids. The biggest one of all being ethics.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
The actual biggest problem comes from splicing together DNA from various animals into our own. We don't know what unholy creatures we may make in the process of perfecting this. Not only that, but there's also that pesky compatibility issue that needs to be addressed. Hybridization of two species is a real thing that happens, but it's incredibly limited to only those that already share some similarities. Take the mule, for example. It's a cross between a horse and a donkey. Two different species of animals, but just close enough genetically that they can create an offspring. Now take, for example, a human and a dog. Two very different species, but not at all close enough genetically for any kind of offspring to exist. If that were the case, we'd have a bunch of Rex Wisconsins walking around. However, if we manage to break that genetic barrier, there's still one more thing we have to deal with. During embryonic development, we do end up growing a tail in the womb, but this is quickly reversed after a few more weeks of development. This is due to what are called Hox genes. These genes are responsible for determining vertebral development in embryos. This includes vertebrae amount, distribution, and specialization. The Hox genes are the reason why we absorb our tails and end up with a normal spine. Hello, editing doc here. Rereading my source, it doesn't directly say that Hox genes are responsible, so I could be wrong about that. I don't want to spread any kind of misinformation, although I probably have been throughout this video that I'm unaware of, but I just wanted to clarify that part. However, in rare cases, something can go awry and a child can be born with a tail. This condition is named human tail. Very creative, I know. It is a congenital abnormality, congenital meaning born with, that is non-fatal, but it can cause problems. Namely, spinal dysraphism, which is another congenital abnormality of the spine. Dysraphism means incomplete fusion, and is a general term that describes any kind of spinal abnormality at birth. There are quite a few to list, and I would suggest looking it up, but at your own discretion. With this, a huge hurdle would be to manipulate human Hox genes to allow for natural growth of a new caudal vertebrae segment. However, this would need to be delicately handled because many things can go wrong. But if we really wanted to, we'll find an answer and make our cat-girl waifus real. Other things I wanted to mention but didn't fit into the main parts of this video were whether cat girls, dog girls, or any other furred animal girl would be made to be hypoallergenic. You have to consider it because there are some dudes out there that are allergic to common pets. Also, would there be any kind of compatibility for dudes who wanted to have kids with their kimono wives? And what would these kids look like? Are the animal traits dominant or recessive? Last thing, would they even be granted basic human rights? To sum it all up, I've discussed what Kemonomimi Anatomy would look like IRL, how that would differ from normal human anatomy, and the challenges we would face if we were to ever make the mistake of trying to make this real. I hope we don't. However, that's ultimately not for me to decide. I'm just some dude on the internet trying to be a doctor one day. And with that, that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I thank you for doing so. Have a wonderful day, take your dog out for a walk, and may the blessing of Asclepius keep you in good health. Latom.